When it comes to our life as Christian people, we can all, I think, say this, and sometime in the past I have failed. I failed God, which means now if I'm on fire for God, I can say I was I'm a previous failure. I failed God in the past. And this is describing the life of Simon Peter. Even though he was used by God, restored by God, and he loved God and got all that worked out, he was one time failed God. He is listed the first in the Bible. When you find the apostles listed, disciples listed that Christ had, those 12, he's listed first. He's the one in Matthew who told Christ, "Thou art the Christ, Son of the living God." He recognized who he was because the Father revealed it to him. That's what Peter saw and what Peter said. And he told the Lord, "I'll follow you even unto death." I think Peter meant that. So he cut off Malchus's ear when they come out of the Garden of Gethsemane. He cut off Malchus's ear and trying to stand up for the Lord. So he was outspoken in many ways as an apostle, but he failed God. He finally denied him. And matter of fact, the third time, you know this from Bible study, he even cursed and said, "I don't know who you're talking about." So he was a failure. And then in the book of Acts, the second chapter, he will stand and preach the first message when the New Testament church is born. He'll preach, and God will use that message. I'll read today from Acts 2, verse 14 and verse 17. Acts 2, verse 14. But Peter, standing up with 11, lifted up his voice and said unto them, "You men of Judea, and all you that dwell at Jerusalem, be this known unto you, and hearken to my words." Look at the boldness he has. Listen to my words. I go down now to verse 37 in Acts 2. When they heard this, what Peter had preached, they were pricked, the word means pierced in their heart, and said unto Peter and to the rest of the apostles, "Men and brethren, what shall we do?" So we see in here a previous failure that can still be used by God. Now think about that. The first two words in verse 14 is, "But Peter." A previous failure, one that failed the Lord, the one that failed, the one that called him into the ministry. He failed him. And now it says, "But Peter." On the morning of resurrection, on that Sunday morning, an angel told the women that came to the sepulchre these words in Mark 16:7. "Go your way, tell his disciples and Peter." Now, why did God see fit to do it that way? Why did he say, "Go tell all the disciples"? But no, he said to the women through the angel, "Go your way, tell his disciples and Peter." Peter had failed him. In the previous days of that week, he had denied him 3 times. And now he says, "Go tell the disciples and tell Peter." See, God knew then the plan he had for Peter. He was standing in the book of Acts, 2nd chapter, and preached the first message, New Testament church. God knew that. And he knew that he failed him. But a person that fails God, thank God, I can say that, can still be used by God. What happens many times, again, because of lack of knowledge in Christian people's lives, they get deceived saying, "Well, I failed God," and they're convinced through the flesh and through the devil's work that you're finished. And some never attempt to serve God again because they know, and they did, they failed God. But now, Peter is an example. But Peter can stand and preach a message in Acts 2. A fervent message can still be given by previous failure. This was not just a feel-good message. This was a fervent, hot message that he preached. In verse 14, let me read it again. Peter, standing up with 11, lifted up his voice and said unto them, without a microphone now, "You men of Judea, and all the dwell at Jerusalem, be this known unto you, and hearken, which means listen or hear my words." It was a fervent delivery from a man who had previously failed God. Now, boldness should be in a person's life. Once God forgives us and restores us, don't go around saying, when I was a failure, I was a failure. No. Accept God's forgiveness, His cleansing, and get up and be bold. It still be in your mind that you failed God if you got a good mind, but it has to leave your heart. A fruitful response when a previous failure is used by God. Notice this now. Not only was he a previous failure that was used by God, and not only was he a previous failure that had a fervent message, but he had a fruitful response. I go to verse 37. When they heard this, what Peter had preached, they were pricked or pierced in their heart and said unto Peter and the rest of the apostles, Men and brethren, what shall we do? They were so touched, they asked the speaker, who was a previous failure, what are we to do? He saw fruit. How much fruit? About 3,000 souls got saved from a man who that same week, of that same month, had cursed and said, I don't know who he was. The same one that Christ one time said, Get behind me, Satan. What you're saying is not the words of God. It got onto Peter. The same one. It says now, we see in Acts 2, about 3,000 people came forward and repented and got baptized. Not from somebody who had never made any mistakes. Not from a preacher who didn't have a resume of failure. Isn't that wonderful? That today we can minister, preach, sing, teach, worship, testify, and we at one time, even maybe the last few days, failed God and can get up and go again. I'm going to listen, don't miss this next part though. Here it is after 2,000 years ago when it happened. And we know that God restored him. And we know that God used. Matter of fact, the history tells us it's believed that Peter requested, crucify me upside down. It's believed that that's the way he died. All that being true, now listen to me now, all that being true, we still talk about his failure. What I'm going to say is now very important. You and I, in ministry, or just in Christianity, if we fail God, he can restore us, cleanse us, and use us mightily. But as years go by, that conversation still comes up. You follow me? It still comes up. That part never goes away. Now, we know Peter is okay. He died faithfully, serving God. But today, after 2,000 years, we still bring up all the time that Peter cursed and said, I don't know him. We still bring up all the time that he failed. I know today ministers who are serving God today and being used by God. But they still know too what happened in the past. It never goes away. You see, it's not been judgmental. It's not bringing condemnation. It's just part of the scar that remains. The scar. And we shouldn't just dwell on that in anybody's life. No, I'm not saying that. But it's just there. It's a part of one's life. And those I know that went through this, I can see them, and I can hear them, and they hate it that it ever happened. That part doesn't go away. So how do we avoid that? We just really have to try ourselves. We fail every day in some way or the other, but try to seek God so strongly and understand if I think I'm going to stand, take heed lest you fall. Just be cautious that a major failure in our life doesn't happen. Again, he can forgive you, restore you, and still use you, but that part never goes away. So, 10 minutes of truth. Today may be longer. But anyway, until next time, From Clark's Chapel Baptist Church, we trust in this church that you would have wonderful days.